Hello and welcome to the move by move analysis of the 13th and the penultimate round of the FIDE World Chess Championship match between Ding Liren from China and Tomraju Gukesh from India. In the 12th game, Ding had defeated Gukesh to equalize the score, and the score now stands at 6 points each. So we have only two more games to go. This is the second last game. And if the match is tied, even after 14 games, we will be witnessing a tiebreaker. Well, if Gukesh manages to win this match, he will be the youngest ever world chess champion and the second world champion from India after the legendary Vishwanathan Anand. In this game, Gukesh starts with white pieces. In chess, a player with white pieces enjoys some advantage. So Gukesh will try to make use of his advantage of white pieces to press for a win in this game. And let's see how Gukesh starts. He played e4, Gukesh's favorite move, and the move which he played in the first game. He started the match with white pieces, and in the first game he played e4, and the last time he gets white pieces, he again plays the move e4. And Ding sticks to his repertoire move. He played e6 for the third time in this match. Whenever Gukesh has played e4, Ding replied with e6. I would like to add that in recent years, Ding has been consistently responding e4 with e5. But it seems for the World Championship match, he had some special preparation with e6 and he sticks to his preparation. Well, Gukesh played d4, d5, and he plays the move knight c3, which is the classical move, which Gukesh had played in the first game. He sticks to it again. And you may recall that Gukesh had lost in the first game after he went for a slightly premature attack by overextending his position. And it seems now Gukesh wants to take revenge and he wants to repeat the same openings. He wants to do better this time. Ding played knight f6, just as he had done in the first game. Gukesh played e5, knight fd7, and now once again we see the same strange move, knight ce2, played by Gukesh. It seems white is actually copying black's idea, or rather a mirror version of black's idea. Okay. Since black has played the knight to the queen side and the pieces are somehow clustered together on the queen side or packed on the queen side, it seems white is doing the same thing on the king side, bringing his knight and packing all his pieces on the king side. Well, seriously speaking, this move is logical. White basically wants to strengthen his center by playing c3 and then shift his knight to the king side. Since white has a pawn on e5, he has space advantage on the king side, and it makes sense for white to shift all his pieces on the king side and attack. Having said that, the most common move here is f4, okay, with the same idea of taking some space on the king side and developing with knight f3. And well, it should be recalled that Vishwanathan Anand, when he became world champion for the first time, he faced his opponent, Alexei Shirov from Latvia. And Anand had also played knight ce2 in his match against Shirov, which also took place coincidentally in Asia, in Tehran. Well, so coincidence apart, after knight ce2, Ding followed the same strategy which he adopted in the first game. He played c5, white played c3, and Ding played knight c6. So we are repeating moves, but Gukesh had 1 day of rest and 1 day time to prepare for this particular game. So here he comes up with an original idea. First, he played a strange move, a strange looking move, that is A3. Well, it seems Gukesh and Ding, especially White, has basically thrown all the grammatical ideas to dustbin and is playing moves like, well, he's without developing his pieces, he's playing flank moves with his pawns, but actually the move makes sense. Well, here I'll show you a sample variation. Say White plays knight f3 and Black exchanges the pawn. Yeah, and then Black plays the queen to b6. White would typically like to move his knight away and then develop his pieces to attack on the king side. Well, the bishop would like to come to d3, White would castle and then continue with his development. The problem is, if White plays natural moves, Black would go bishop b4 check, and suddenly the d4 pawn would come under attack. White cannot play bishop d2 because then the support of d4 would be lost and Black can capture knight d4. Otherwise, the only other move left is king e2, which is obviously a very bad move. So that is why the move a3 is useful. White played a3, and this was preparation, of course. It took only 10 seconds to play this move. It takes away the square b4 from Black's pieces. Sometimes bishop b4, sometimes knight b4 can be irritating. And since the position is quite closed, White can afford to spend one move to safeguard his position and then continue with development. Okay, in certain openings, when the position is open and the pace of the game is quite quick, rapid, then even one move matters. But now a3 has been played by quite a few players, but not many grandmasters. But the surprising move is, after bishop e7, here White unleashed his first new move of the game, that is bishop to e3. This has never been played in the past. So this was the preparation which Gukesh made for this particular game. Okay, let's go back one move. If you play the French defense with Black, or if you intend to play the French defense with Black, and your opponent plays a move like a3, you have to think of how to respond in the best possible manner. And with Black, if the position is very congested because Black lacks space, the best move for Black, or the counterplay from Black for Black, comes from moves like f6. This is the type of move you have to keep on thinking at virtually every turn. Whenever you play the move f6, you basically challenge White's space advantage and you change the game altogether. After castle, suddenly your rook on f8 will get an open file, and basically White has to take decision of what to do with his e-pawn, whether to maintain it or whether to exchange. Well, here f6 could have been played directly, or after preliminary cd, Black can play f6. The idea being that the usual move here, f4, does not work. Why? Well, White can still play f4, but after fe, he has to take de and not fe, because this will allow Black to play queen h4 check, and suddenly the king will be embarrassed. g3 is not possible because of queen e4 trapping the rook, and knight g3 would lose the d-pawn. So that is why the move f6 is quite effective in this position, and White may have to play something like knight f4, and I'm sure Gukesh must have prepared against f3, f6. In the rest day, he might have spent a lot of time with the move a3, and after bishop e7, his new idea, bishop e3. So, well, since Ding was taken by surprise with the move a3, He took a practical decision of not playing the critical move f6, but he went for simple development bishop e3, bishop e7. After bishop e3, well, this is a new move, but a perfectly logical move because white wants to strengthen his center before freeing his knight for kingside attack. Well, black played knight b6, the same type of moves which he had played in the first game. Well, in the first game, you may recall that white had gone f4, g4. He overextended his position, and black black played a5. He got counterplay on the queen side. But now white is much more guarded in his approach, and he plays bishop e3 first. Black played knight b6, so he wants to gradually unravel his pieces on the queen side. And now comes the move knight f4, not knight g3, but knight f4. So one of the ideas is, of course, the knight from here can also go to h5. The same knight from g3 can also go to f5. But from f4, the knight also keeps an eye on e6 pawn. So anytime black plays f6, well, the knight not only eyes e6, but also g6 square. For instance, here white can contemplate queen h5 check. So, well, so that is the reason why knight f4 was played against f6 and, of course, making way for the bishop to develop. Here, black played cd. So one of the rules of thumb in this type of position is that, well, black waits for white knight to leave e2 before taking cd. Because after cd, the c3 square is vacated, but the knight cannot take advantage of knight c3 square. So that is why black played cd at this point. And now we have a quite interesting position. Black has an option of developing by castling, playing bishop d7, or straight away going for attack with knight c4. Which is the best move? Well, Ding played knight c4 right away. Okay, one of the dangers in this position is if black castles and plays the very normal moves, like say bishop d, well, if white goes knight f3 and black keeps on developing with bishop d7, white plays b d3, and just to illustrate the type of risk in this position, black plays knight c4 trying to attack on the queen side, and white plays h4. White has all the pieces lined up to attack on the king side. Both the knights, both the bishops having diagonals. Okay, so this is a position which is almost a dream position for white. If black plays knight b2, which is a mistake, white can actually sacrifice his bishop. This type of sacrifices are sometimes called the Greek gift. I don't know why, how this name came, but bishop h7 check. Well, here when black captures king h7, well, black may do well to decline the offer, after which white can play queen b1, defending bishop, attacking the knight, and keeping chances of attack. But after king h7, white's knight will jump to g5, check. And whether black goes king g8 directly or after preliminary bishop g5, h5, another check. When the king goes back, the queen will land on h5 with the threat of queen h8 checkmate. Black will not be able to save this checkmate. If he moves his pawn, making way for the king to escape, white can once again take away the f7 square from the king and then play queen h8 checkmate in the next move. So this is white's idea if black ignores white's, well, white's plan totally. So after knight f4, this is what white was aiming. Knight f3, bd3, if allowed h4, and then go for sacrifice. That is the reason why Ding responded immediately with knight c4. Well, having said that, bishop d7 looks like the best move to me. Well, the idea is black still has the threat of knight c4, as well as he can castle on the king side when, when the situation is better. And he also preserves the option of castling on the queen side if the queen comes to b6 after knight c4. So this is a move which is comparatively best in this position. White is slightly better. White has the advantage of space. But Ding played knight c4 immediately, and white captured the bishop because this knight was threatening to either take the pawn or even take this bishop, which is a potentially attacking piece. So white takes this knight. Black has to take back. And it is in this position white missed his first opportunity to win the game. White played knight e2. Well, the other move, knight f3, looks very logical with the idea of castling. But the best move in this position was to go for the knight f3 idea, but first placing the queen on the king side and then getting knight f3. So by playing this move order, white will have a clear-cut advantage of pieces, number of pieces on the king side to attack. Here, if black goes castling, white will play knight f3. And once again, a typical idea which can take place. I'm making not the best move for black, but to illustrate what idea white has. I'm making some simple moves to show that how quickly black's position can go down. If black develops his bishop and white goes knight h5 threatening checkmate on g7, black would have to defend by playing g6 and white castles. One of the reasons is he takes his king away from this kind of counterattack. Queen a5 checks and of course brings his rook to play. And if black continues with his development with rook c8, then white has the move bishop h6. This is white's idea, to place all the pieces on the king side and attack. Now white is threatening the rook. If the rook goes here, how will white continue the attack? Well, the simplest and the best way is to go queen f4. Now, till this point, black could not touch the knight because it was pinned. The pawn on g6 was pinned. But after queen f4, if black takes the knight on h5, we can play, or white can play queen g3 check, followed by checkmate on g7. So the h5 knight is immune. But if black continues his policy of ignoring white's attack, then we have the move knight to g5. And suddenly all the pieces have landed on the king side. White is threatening checkmate on g7 or h7 after capturing f7. And here, if black plays bishop g5, white will capture bishop g5, attacking the queen. The bishop will land on f6, the queen on h6, and finally we will have a checkmate on g7. So this is typically how white can win if black ignores white's threats altogether. So queen g4 was the move trying to be played, and probably black would have to go moves like g6, after which white can develop either with knight e2 with the idea of knight c3, knight e4, or simply with knight f3. In either case, white would have a very big advantage. Well, weakened king side for black and active pieces for white. Instead, Gukesh played knight ge2. Well, we can understand his idea. He wants to shift his knight to c3 and then maybe on e4 and attack black. Well, if you look at the position carefully, we have an imbalance where black has the pawn on c4. This is his extra pawn, and white has the extra pawn on d4. And also, black has the bishop compared to white's knight. But at this moment, the bishop is, well, undeveloped. If the bishop can reach this diagonal, then maybe the bishop will outplay the knight. But till that time, in short run, White's position is much more attacking. White is ahead in development, and the knight does have access to good squares. Well, now here, this move was played after only 2 minutes of thought. So here Gukesh could have done well because by this time, Gukesh had almost 1 hour lead in his clock. So as I have said previously, Ding's time management in this entire World Championship match has been pathetic. He has been taking a lot of time in the opening, and only when he's in time pressure, he plays quite well actually, and he is managing to somehow save his games. And Gukesh has more time. He could have thought and played Queen G4 at this point. But anyway, after Knight Ge2, Black played B5. This move strengthens the C4 pawn as well as makes way for the bishop to develop. White played castles. Black also castled. And White played Knight C3, attacking the B5 pawn. He played Rook B8. This is much better than A6 because with Rook B8, Black activates the rook, takes it away from this diagonal, the, well, Queen F3 diagonal, and also he prepares B4 counterattack if given time. In this position, White went for the most critical move, that is Knight H5. White has space on the king side, so he has to attack on the king side with his pieces. And now Ding came up with a very nice idea, that is F5. Well, we'll see why this is such a nice idea. But before continuing, well, while analyzing this game with computers, most experts found it very surprising that computers suggests that King H8 is even better defense for Black. The logic is after Queen G4, Rook G8 defends the pawn, and Black simply sits tight on the king side. Maybe the queen can come to F8, defending all the squares, and then he can go for queenside attack with the rest of the pieces. Well, the exact reason why this particular idea works is after Knight E4, Black can go F5, forking the king, queen, and the knight, forcing White to take EF6, and after GF6, Black's rook will be opened, the file will be opened, and along with bishop b7, he will create very good counterattack against the king. So this was an inhuman or a pro-computer approach, playing the king to h8 and rook to g8 and hoping that Black will get very good counterplay. But for Ding and even world champions, this is much more logical move, taking space on the king side, not allowing the queen to come to g4 at all. And if Black can stabilize his position, then this bishop may outplay the knight in the long run. So White has to keep his initiative going. He played EF6. Well, now a natural reaction for White would have been to play Queen F3, attacking the knight, and sliding the queen to G3, attacking the king also. The idea being that if Knight D4, White can simply play Queen G3, attacking on G7. Black has to save the mat. He has to play Rook F7, and then White can pin the knight and win the knight. Okay, bishop and rook are attacking this. Well, this is the only defense, and then we can exchange and play Knight E2, winning by pinning. So this was an idea which seemed very natural for White. So why did Gukesh not play this? Well, there is a defense for Black, and that is the surprising move, Queen to E8. This move defends Knight as well as prevents White from playing Queen G3, because in that case, this knight would hang. So a very nice geometry by the Queen, defense as well as attacks. And suddenly, Black has stabilized this position, and then bishop b7 coming, the position may be even better for Black. So that is why Queen f3 could not be played, and Ding had to play ef6 to keep his initiative going. Bishop f6 by Black. And now Gukesh took 13 minutes time to contemplate what to do, whether to play knight f6 or to play queen f3. Well, with knight f6, black has to play queen f6 because if rook f6, white can pin the rook and win the exchange. So queen f6 is the only move, after which white could have gone d5, breaking the position immediately and going for a position for an endgame check. Black has to play queen e6, rook fd1, offering to trade the queens and having a very small advantage because black's queenside pawns are slightly weak, but black can play rook f5, offering to trade the rooks and defend the b5 pawn. Although white has some advantage, it may be very difficult to convert that advantage into a win. And remember, this is the last time white is playing in the standard game with white pieces. So Gukesh wants to make use of his opportunity and he doesn't want to exchange too many pieces. He played queen f3, attacking the knight. Now over here, Gukesh played queen e8. Well, since he had the move queen e8 in his mind from the previous calculation, he played this defending the knight and keeping pressure against white's knight. Well, here black could have played knight takes d4, winning a pawn. This d4 was attacked. The reason why he did not play is that white would have played knight f6 check, and black cannot take back with the queen because that would allow white to exchange the queens first and win this knight. That is why black has to play with take back with the rook. Well, after rook f6, the move which, okay, by the way, g f6 is also unplayable because of queen g3 check, double attack, checking as well as attacking the rook. So the only move here is rook f6. And now the move contemplated by Gukesh was queen to d1, attacking the pinned knight as well as threatening bishop g5, winning the exchange. So it is double attack, or a move with two ideas. It seems white is winning because black is a pawn up, but white will get back at least an exchange. But if you look at the position deeper, black does have the move e5, defending the knight and giving or sacrificing the exchange by developing his pieces actively. And in this position, although black is an exchange down, he is having a bishop for a rook, bishop and a pawn for a rook, which is slightly disadvantageous. However, this bishop, if it lands on d3, is actually much better placed than white's rook. So this is a position which would be in fact better for black, even though he is materially slightly behind. Well, so the move queen e8 played by black is a minor mistake. He could have taken chance and captured the pawn on d4, sacrificing an exchange and getting a small advantage. But black played queen e8 and white now exchanged the bishop for his knight and he went back queen e2. So the dust has settled. The initial skirmishes have stopped. Now looking at this position, both sides have one weak pawn, white on d4, black on e6. Both sides have opposite color bishop, white having dark square bishop, black having light square bishop. And here black has a queenside majority. If you evaluate the position, it is almost equal, but white still has a small initiative till black develops his bishop. So black played queen g6. He places his queen on light square, trying to, well, build up an attack on the light squares by developing his bishop from b7 later. And white played a very nice move, that is f3. Well, whenever you have opposite color bishops, try to put your pawns on the same squares as your opponent's bishop. That will not only restrict your opponent's bishops, but also open new squares for your own bishop. So the bishop on e3 becomes more active. It can move from f2 to g3, and as well as, well, the move f3 creates a supporting square for the knight on e4. Black played rook f8. Now he retreated the rook, anticipating white will play knight e4 and attack the rook anyways. But a better move would have been to go rook f5, so that, well, this b5 pawn is overprotected by the rook. In future, black can play bishop b7 without having to worry about knight b5. So rook f5 was a better move. He played rook f8 and white played rook a d1. Here, black cannot play bishop b7 immediately because this b5 pawn is under fire. So he might have played a6 to prepare bishop b7 and complete his development. Instead, he went for a tempting idea. He played knight e7 with the idea of placing the knight either on d5 or f5. Also, by playing knight e7, he's discouraging white from playing d5 because the knight would exchange, black would exchange all his pieces on d5. So knight e7 looks like a tempting move, but then Gukesh unleashed his brilliant idea. In a position which is relatively very quiet, nothing immediately happening, he suddenly used the trick bishop f4. Well, the bishop is hanging. Black can capture the bishop right away. But then white has the brilliant double attack. Queen e5, attacking the rook, attacking the other rook. This rook cannot go to f8. This rook, well, cannot support the rook by playing f8 because of the bishop on c8. And suddenly white will win an exchange. By sacrificing his knight, he will win a rook and he will be an exchange up. So here, after bishop f4, black had to defend his rook. He went rook b6. And white first went bishop c7, attacking the rook. After rook b7, white played bishop d6. So black wanted to put his bishop to an active square. That is why he displaced the rook and played bishop c7 first. Actually, rook c6 would have been a better move for black. Now, this move would have deprived the bishop from coming to d6. But the reason why Ding did not play this, he was already under severe time pressure at this stage. So remember that I said previously that Ding's time management has been quite poor in this match, and he has been taking a lot of time in the opening phases. That leaves him with less time to think when the position is critical. So he played rook b7 instead of rook c6 because after rook c6, he had to calculate how he would respond against knight b5. Black is a pawn down, but black would attack the knight. The knight can't move because the bishop will be captured. White will play this intermediate move or in-between move, counter-attacking the knight on e7. The rook would move to f5. This is a brilliant move because black now wants to capture this with the rook. White is a pawn up. So after a move like, say, a4, bishop b5, bishop e7, bishop a4. So after these normal moves, the position still looks slightly better for white, but black has very good chance to draw because of opposite color bishop. So this is how the game could have gone after rook c6, which was the best move for black. But black played rook b7, bishop d6, rook e8, unpinning the knight, and white played the best practical decision. He took this knight with his bishop. See, the only way black can think of drawing in this position is that the knights get exchanged, all the pieces get exchanged, and the players are left with opposite color bishops. But after bishop e7, we will have a position where white will have a knight against bishop. That's an imbalance. And since white has attacking chances, his pieces are more active, the knight will coordinate much better with the queen, and white will definitely have the advantage. So here, after queen e5, white threatens b5. Black plays a6, defending the pawn. White went d5. White keeps his initiative. Well, actually, he could have preserved his advantage by playing knight e4 or queen c5, playing on the dark squares in black's position. These dark squares cannot be defended with the bishop. But white went for immediate liquidation. He played d5. He thought his initiative will give him advantage. Black is forced to take e d5. After queen d5 check, black proposed to exchange the queens. White played queen c5 with moves such as rook c8, rook d8 on the horizon. Black defended by playing rook e8, and now white played a move with best practical chance. He played rook de1. It's a fantastic move, giving white practical winning chances. Now black has the option of either going queen f7, defending his queen, or capturing on e1 with two rooks for a queen. Well, in this case, black had to be very careful in his calculations, because white can play king f2, attacking the rook and the bishop as well. So this is the only move. And after knight e4, it seems all the pieces will come at an attack after knight d6. Both the rooks and bishops will be forked by the knight. But black did have a defense here. He could have played rook be7, and after knight d6, forking the rook as well as the bishop is attacked twice by the queen as well as the knight. Black would have played rook e5. This is the move which black missed in his calculations. Okay, here the point is, after rook e5, the queen, if it leaves the attack on the bishop, if it goes to a move like, say, queen d4 or b4, then black can, well, simply he can play rook e2 check first, moving his rook out of attack with the queen, and then he can remove his rook on e8. And after that, well, there's nothing which white has. If he captures, black recaptures, and black has two rooks for a queen, which is good for him. So, after rook e5, white would want to play queen c7, maintaining pressure upon the bishop, and then black could keep on repeating moves, attacking the queen. So wherever the queen goes, if it goes here, black can play rook e6, or maybe even bishop d7, attacking the queen. So this way, black would have escaped double attack with the knight and saved the game. Instead, black played queen f7, which was a mistake. And the reason why black missed this move is that black was already running short of time. He had less than 7 minutes to make his remaining 10 moves. So he had to take quick decisions. He could not calculate accurately the moves. And that is why I have been repeatedly saying that Ding was consistently throughout the match mismanaging his time, and he was taking too much time in the opening and leaving less time for critical moments. So here he plays queen f7, plundering. And look at this position. If Gukesh does not win the World Championship match, and it's a big if, then he will remember this position for the rest of his life. Here, Gukesh had chance to seal the match, win the match by playing rook e8 check immediately. After queen e8, knight e4 with the threat of forking all the pieces. And whatever black plays, if he plays queen d7, the knight still lands on d6. After attacking the rook and the bishop, the rook going to b8, defending the bishop, he can play queen d5 check. Upon king f8, rook to d1, the rook will come up. We have a great knight on d6. The rook will join the attack soon, and black will be left defenseless. So this was the winning idea for white, to play rook e8 check and then play knight e4. But after less than 1 minute thought, Gukesh quickly played knight e4. This move looks tempting because now after knight d6, white will fork all black's pieces. So this looks very tempting, but unfortunately, black has a defense. Black played the only move in this position. Black had only 3 minutes left to make remaining 9 moves. And in less than 3 minutes, he found the only move in this position. So if Ding wins the match, and it's a big if, then he will remember this position and we will remember the move, the only move played under time pressure, and that is rook f8. Okay, this is how Ding saves his game. The point is, well, to defend against knight d6, if black plays a move like, say, rook d6, white will go knight d6, forking the rest of the pieces. And if the queen goes to c7, well, moving away from attack and attacking the queen, white always has knight b7, capturing the rook, defending his own queen. Therefore, the move is rook c7, counter-attacking the queen. But after the exchange of queens, the knight captures d8. That is why rook f8 is the best. After knight d6, rook c7, and suddenly there is no win. Okay, black succeeds in defending all his fork pieces. Queen e5, the queen moves away. Now everything is defended. White played queen d5 check, the king moved away, and probably in his calculation, Gukesh had thought, or he had seen, knight e8 winning by forking the queen and the rook. But he had missed queen b6 check. Well, saving this with a tempo, and after, say, a move like rook f2, the rook will also defend itself with tempo. So this would give black good position instead. So after king h8, white does not have the fork knight e8, and suddenly the game is heading towards a draw once again. Black succeeds in defending the game. Rook e5, rook e7, black exchanges pieces very quickly. After rook e5, well, understandably, white doesn't want to exchange the queens, although this might have been slightly good. But after rook e5, black plays the move h6, which is a very safe move, making square for his king. And queen c5 attacking the bishop. Black played bishop d7. After knight e4, black went queen f4 with chances of counterattack, checking on c1. White played rook e7, attacking the bishop, and the bishop went to f5. That was the 40th move for black. So black survives time pressure as well as attack by white, and somehow is managed to save the game. Well, after queen d4 threatening checkmate, black played rook g8. He defended g7, and white went h3. Well, the rest of the game is not as interesting, but there is a very interesting, instructive moment which I would like to point. Black played queen c7 check, queen c1 check. After king f2, he exchanged the knight for the bishop. This knight was always a dangerous piece and looked much more dangerous than the bishop. So black gets rid of the dangerous knight. And after this exchange, this is an equal position, a draw. But still white has some pressure thanks to the queen on d4 and the possibility of the rook going to e6 or e7, attacking g7 or h6. So although the position is objectively drawn or equal, black still has to find ways of drawing. Now here, black played the move c3, which is the best practical chance to draw the game immediately. Well, what does the move achieve? Black thought that if he could get rid of all the pawns on the queen side, although he's a pawn up, even by sacrificing one pawn, if he's able to exchange all the pawns on the queen side, With only 3 against 2 remaining on the king side, he can manage a draw because it's a theoretical draw which he knows how to draw. So instead of keeping these pawns and having white's active pieces on the board, he decides to play c3 and give up his pawns. If white now captures the c3 pawn with his queen, black will exchange and play rook c8 attacking this pawn. If the rook goes to e3, black will play rook c4 followed by rook a4, and most likely he will get rid of all the pawns without any trouble. If white plays rook a6 attacking this pawn instead, black will still capture this and will play rook b3 with the idea of b4, exchanging all the pawns and then defending 2 against 3, which is a theoretically drawn position. So white didn't take queen c3, instead he took with the pawn, and black took back on a3. White played king g3, moving away from potential checks. If he goes rook e6 with the idea of rook h6 checkmate, black has the move queen a2 check, which forces white's rook to come back because the rook is also attacked. So he played king g3 instead, and after queen b3, well, preventing moves like rook e6, white went rook e7, black started pushing his pawns, and black played queen c4, which is a very thematic move. He wants to get rid of his pieces to exchange the pawns on the queen side. So queen e5, he played queen c6, queen b5, and then the queens came off the board after queen check and queen b4. In this position, white managed to win a pawn, but this is a theoretical drawn position which Ding Liren, being a world champion, is aware of. He played rook a2, king g3, king h7, and we go through the games quickly because there is nothing much left. The only point to remember is it's very difficult for white to make progress because the moment he starts pushing the pawns, black will start harassing his king with checks, and the king has to remain in such a position. It has to defend the pawns as well as to advance. That is quite difficult for white. And if the rook comes back to defend against black's harassing checks, then white will not be able to make any progress. So let's see how it happens. f4, king f6, king f3. White is planning to advance his pawns. Black rook remained active here so that it can check from side as well as from behind if necessary. The rook is also attacking this pawn. The king can't move up. So white played g3, taking the pawn away from attack of the rook. He played check. Once again, he wants to eye the pawn so that the king can't come up. King came up from g4. Black waited. White went h4. And black waited again. White went check. The king dropped back. White advanced his pawn. So white is planning to gradually advance his pawn by playing king f4, g4, etc. But now came a very simple move by black, which forced immediate draw. He played h5 check. Well, asking the king where he would like to go. If he takes on h5, rook g3, and the king is trapped, this is a draw. White can only move his rook, and black will also wait with his rook. The game will be drawn. So after king f4, black played rook c4 check, and if the king goes to e5, the rook will sit here on g4, defending g7 as well as attacking g3. This is another dead draw. So instead, white played king f3, and the players kept on repeating moves. Check, check, check. And the position repeated for 3 times. Both the players agreed to draw. So that was another thrilling encounter. Gukesh missed his win twice. He could have played queen g4 in the opening and got a winning position, and also he could have exchanged his rook later when Ding was in time pressure and only then played knight e4. He missed a win by a whisker. And about Ding, well, Ding mismanaged his time once again, but he managed to keep his calm and find the only move to save the game in time pressure. So having said that, it was a really very great encounter. Both the players making plenty of good moves. And we are in for the last round of World Championship match where Ding has white pieces. We'll be uh, giving analysis of the game tomorrow. And well, the experts are predicting Ding has the advantage in the match. So he may even win the match on tiebreaker or in the last game. But if you ask my opinion, anything can happen in chess. I remember that in the World Championship final, where Anand played against Topalov, the match was tied after 12 games. After 11 games, it was a 12-game match. And in the last game, Anand had black. Everybody thought either Topalov would win or we will have a tiebreaker. And then Anand managed to defeat Topalov with black pieces in the last round and win the World Championship. So maybe Gukesh will repeat what Anand had done in the past. Let's wait and watch for tomorrow's game. Goodbye.